Welcome to Scene Invaders. I'm Dan. Just a quick note before the recap starts. It's mostly me talking in this recap because I do the recap portion of our videos. Jules gets a lot more time in the regular videos, which we're going to be covering in season 4. We do theories, we read fan comments, we do a whole bunch of stuff, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So please join us for season 4. All right, enjoy the recap. I love the way they did it this season. They showed us the murder in the finale last year, and then we find out that that's not actually the murder. They like kind of flipped it on the head, but then it kind of makes sense because it's only murders in the building, so it had to take place in the building, right?
Yeah. That's what Charles said at one point.
That's
too.
what he
He's
says.
Like, well,
yeah,
it doesn't really matter. It has to take place in the building anyway, right?
As the blood starts to drip onto his head. So,
Mabel, we couldn't have done the podcast anyway because Ben didn't die in the building.
I love actually when you see that Paul Rudd's character is not dead when he comes back into the room.
That's right. I'm alive.
How could you?
What the fuck?
Did you notice they did like the classic whodunit lineup? It's like, oh, here's this person. Here's this person. You got a quick little background. Some key people that I noticed right off the bat were Donna and Cliff. And then you got Dickie, Paul Rudd's brother / manager, Ben Glenroy. That's his name in the show. So you got his brother / manager. Basically, we saw a lineup of all these new characters. And it's like, okay, could it be any of them? We see later on that Mabel and Charles seem to think that it is someone from the play. They kind of played with us a little bit by having that character Greg. At first, they were just like giving us like signs that he's creepy, and then they had the full-on kidnapping sequence. We see that he survives, and then he's killed again.
What's that?
And then episode 2, the beat goes on. Basically, we're just dealing with the fallout of him actually dying now. Ben actually is dead. So, Oliver is trying to just keep the show going. He wants the show to go on.
They're pulling the plug, Oliver. They just don't want to say it to your face.
Have the understudy take the role. Mabel's having her dreams again. She's dreaming of Ben because it turns out that she actually really looked up to him. She really liked the show. She had a connection with her mom from his show, Girl Cop.
Hey, you.
I loved you in Girl Cop.
Save you a dance, Girl Cop.
The trio end up going to the funeral together, but they're in Overflow 3. They're not invited to the actual room.
I loved that.
Oliver didn't like that too much.
This pack of nobodies. No, you're in the right place. This is Overflow 3.
But, that was where we saw Greg when I mentioned it earlier.
Something's rotten in the state of Denmark.
Hamlet?
No, Greg.
We get this new character, Greg, who claims he was a security guard.
I did security for Ben.
But we find out that was all BS. And basically, he chloroformed them, I guess. That's what he did. And then he tied them up.
Yeah, that's what it looked like.
And I love the Pittsburgh toilet. That is when it's just a toilet with no walls. They were tied to that. And he was like,
You hated Ben so much so that you killed him.
No.
Wait, what? Charles didn't kill him. You did.
and then the cops come. So that was kind of something that happened really fast, that they don't really do stuff like that. But it turned out to be a red herring basically instantly.
Let me see your hands.
I didn't do anything.
But then, Oliver trying to continue his quest of keeping the show alive, he talks to a critic like, I know your shtick. You close your notebook when you're enjoying something. Can you please publish that? And let's keep this show going. But she ran out of ink.
My pen ran out of ink. That's why I stopped taking notes.
She was going to pan the show.
My review was going to be a pan.
Then he has a heart attack because of this news, basically. And then we find out about the handkerchief. Greg has Ben's.
I stole it from Ben's the night he died when I was looking for clues and collectibles.
Ben had one at the scene of the crime, and we saw that evidence through Mabel's flashback when she was taking videos and pictures.
If Greg had Ben's handkerchief, then whose handkerchief was Ben holding when he died?
Where he's clearly holding on to a handkerchief. So they kind of put it together like, oh, he grabbed it off the person when he was falling.
Right.
What if he tried to grab onto something?
And all he could reach was the killer's pocket square.
Basically, find the owner of the handkerchief, find the murderer.
Yeah.
No, we'll get there.
Episode 3 called Grab Your Hankies. This one starts off with Mabel and Charles, and they are trying to kick off the podcast again, but Oliver while they're doing that, he's still just trying to save the play at this point, despite his heart attack. So I guess he just is going to say, screw it. I'm
The
going to do
man's
whatever I want.
dedicated, you know?
Yeah. So he's just going to keep pushing. So something we talked about last episode, that everyone was at the Arconia when Ben died, but then they also put it together. But yeah, everyone was there the first time too, at the attempt.
Everyone was at the Arconia when Ben was pushed, and everyone was at the theater when he collapsed.
It's kind of like, yeah, could be anyone. How do we narrow that down? Let's find the handkerchief.
Someone else's handkerchief. We need to find out who in the cast doesn't have theirs.
And that's the best idea.
I love Charles in this scene when he was talking to Mabel. He's like, no biggie. It's a smallie.
Who doesn't have a hanky? I can do that. That's no biggie. That's a smally. It's a very small thing.
Yeah.
Like, this dude is so funny.
Kimber, okay, this is the first time they bring her up. There was some suspicion that she was trying to be romantic with Ben.
No, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. The night Ben died, he apologized to Kimber for making things messy. Do you think they were hooking up?
Let's look into her a little bit. And that's kind of the theme for the episode, that there's little breadcrumbs that are kind of pointing to her, including the video that we see later on that we'll get to. Then Charles is with the cast, and he just had this handkerchief idea, so he's like,
Remember those hankies that Ben gave us? What if we each found ours and just showed them to each other?
everybody bring your handkerchief and we'll make a quilt. And you got to respect the effort, right? He's just,
I mean,
yeah.
he was very obvious, but
Yeah.
he tried so hard.
So then Oliver has the idea to turn the play into a musical, Death, Rattle, Dazzle. And he tells the cast this, and we'll see what happens with that later in the episode. Mabel and Tobert. We see them both on the elevator going to the penthouse, and they're both kind of bullshitting each other, but we don't know that at the time.
You're going to the penthouse?
Oh, yeah. I left some equipment at Ben's I need to pick up.
But then finally, Loretta returns. Meryl Streep is back, and Dickie is her manager now all of a sudden.
Late. Ben's brother, Dickie, he sort of offered to be my manager.
But anyway, she got an audition for it.
A network drama.
Through Dickie. So they're working together. But then, okay, we get the scene with Tobert and Mabel. They're both searching the apartment, trying to act like they're not looking for something else that they're not supposed to say, but it just comes out.
Tobert's like, yeah, obviously my boom mic is not in this drawer.
You know what? We're both clearly up to something, and we're both clearly pretty shitty liars.
So he admits it. He's like, all right, that's not what I'm looking for. But then someone comes, and it's Dickie. We'll find out what they were looking for in just a second, but that's when we see Dickie in the apartment. He kind of freaks out a little bit, but that could just be because he misses his brother. Oliver's kind of displeased about the performance of the musical so far. He doesn't like how it's going, and he sends everyone home.
Why don't we start fresh tomorrow morning?
So then we get to the meat of Tobert and Mabel's conversation. We find out that Ben and Tobert got in an argument that night. Ben took the camera, but the camera was still recording. So there's something on there the night he died.
You know, I was with Ben opening night, and he ripped away my camera and stormed off into his dressing room, but it was still recording.
Both of them want that. And he found the drive. He found the footage. So he's like, I'm not going to give it to you for your dumb podcast. I'm doing a documentary. See ya. No hard feelings, but you don't get this. But while he leaves, she swiped it off of him in pure Mabel
Which
fashion.
was, loved it.
Yeah.
Also loved
good.
that she called him Flobert. That made me laugh.
Yeah. So Charles is still on the hanky kick. They all say they'll bring it tomorrow. Kimber kind of changes the topic right away, and she turns it to,
so Charles, you'll tell Oliver we're not going to do the musical, right?
Yeah, we're not going to do the musical.
and we see Loretta and Oliver sharing a nice moment together. She's trying to ease his mind on everything. But then Dickie shows up, kind of ruins the vibe, because he tells her that, hey, you got that role in that TV show. It's in LA. We got to go on Friday. Doesn't really go well for Oliver. He's pissed, and he brings up her contract situation.
She's under contract.
You can't leave, type of thing. Doesn't really go
That was
well.
savage.
Yeah, and to her, she's like, I'm the struggling actor. Yeah, you found me, you discovered me, but now I got something better and you're going to hold me back. So she leaves the apartment. Funny enough, Mabel figures out she can't get into this drive, so she just goes back to Tobert, lets him know, yeah, I did steal. Obviously, he would know that she stole it. She's not being shady about it at all. She's like, yeah, I stole it. Let's get in it together. I really need to see what's on here. I need to see who killed him.
This isn't a joke. This is urgent. I need to find who killed Ben.
And then we get the scene with Charles telling Oliver that no one wants to do the musical. He's kind of upset about it. Loretta shows up, Then he's nice. Hey, I won't bring up the contract. I won't enforce the contract. You can leave, but I want you to sing the Nanny's Lullaby song before you do it. Then the cast shows up. She sings. It's lovely. Everything is kind of going well. And then at the same time, we get a different scene with Mabel and Tobert, and they're playing the tape. It was the first thing we saw of his point of view of the night that he died, and we see something that actually happened, and it's a conversation.
I want you so fucking bad, but you're gonna ruin my career, and I'm gonna like it.
Part of
It
me
might be
thinks it's
Kimber.
the tray of cookies.
Yeah, true.
Definitely the tray of cookies.
Then we see Loretta. She wants to stay. She doesn't want to go to LA and do the shows, and then they kiss. So they're having their little moment together.
Finally.
It was nice. But then we find out that Kimber does not have her hanky.
Yeah, I really wanted to give you my hanky, but I must have thrown it away.
Oh boy. Episode ends.
Great, you got it.
Episode 4 called The White Room. We start off with the return of Cinda. Cinda's back.
I'm actually really excited about this.
Me too. You know, Tina Fey's great. She's doing her podcast monologue in the beginning of the episode. She has an arc this episode that we'll talk about when we get to it, but she's back. Then we see Mabel is, looking for her new apartment because she has to leave the Arconia. I think she said, like 2 weeks they were giving her or something like that. Like, not a long time.
Yeah.
I have to be out in 4 weeks.
And then we go right back to Cinda doing her podcast. And she, we had some issues with team members.
Poppy, you fucking bitch.
Yeah, I loved that.
Joy is moving in with Charles, which is also a huge part of this episode because of what happens with Charles this episode.
As the episode went on, I was like, maybe she's a little nuts.
The gang is together. Mabel decides she wants to go to the theater and try to find some evidence that Ben was poisoned. Oliver just doesn't want it to be Kimber because she can actually sing. And she has 2 million TikToky followers.
Oh, and the thing about Kimber, I just found out that she has 2 million TikToky people.
So he doesn't want that to happen. Charles starts rehearsing his rap that he was explaining earlier on, like a patter type song. And yeah, he gets teleported to this white room, which is apparently a thing with people that do plays.
I guess I've never heard it described like that.
Yeah.
But I get it.
I'm like, okay, what are they doing? What are they doing? We come back and his pants are off and shit's just knocked over everywhere.
I don't know what happened. My mind just went blank and I crossed over into this other realm.
Mabel wants to find the exact anti-aging serum. She wants to test it for poison.
We have to find the serum that Ben used on opening night and test it for poison. Do you think it's still in the theater?
They go, well, Howard can get us in. So she makes up some lie about her sweater.
Jesus H. Christ, I love your sweaters.
And he agrees to let him in. Then Oliver and Mabel, they're planning to go to Ben's dressing room, but they stumble upon Kimber sitting in hers. And they're like, what do you live here? And no, she just does her business, her beauty business from there. They're like, well, this isn't good. We want to go snoop around. So then they're like, all right. Well, Mabel comes up with the idea. I'll girl talk her. And I love they're like, are you capable of that? And she's like,
hey, mama. Yeah, we're like, so work and slay.
So she's going to distract Kimber. And then Oliver and Charles are going to go to Ben's dressing room. That's the plan. Then Mabel gets another phone call. And I'm like, who is this person? Because it was early in the episode. She got a text. She responded to the text, like, leave me alone, basically. I really like the scene where Mabel's trying to dig into Kimber to see if she was dating Ben. And Kimber, she denies being with Ben, but she says she did want something from him. She wanted an endorsement for these products that she sells. And apparently he had agreed to do it, but then he backed out. So then she didn't feel bad for selling the hanky. And then that's where we find out that's why she doesn't have the hanky. Right before this happened, Oliver and Charles were in Ben's dressing room and they both see something. And then the next scene, we find out what they saw. Someone wrote fucking pig on his mirror in red lipstick. So she takes the lipstick, right? Gets a text again, agrees to meet. And then we see it's Cinda. Cinda's trying to get her to meet. Cinda wants her to team up. She wants her to be a partner. Mabel says, I'm not going to, I'm working on something right now. And then Cinda kind of puts it together that it's about Ben. Before she leaves the room, she offers her an insane amount of money, adds on 2 zeros. So what was it, 10 million maybe? I don't know. It was a ton of money that she got offered. Yeah.
My brain didn't even process it, but I love that she was like, Good, because that was too much money for me, actually.
Yeah.
Okay, good, because that's actually too much.
So she says no. And then the last time Charles goes to the White Room this episode, he was just with Joy at the apartment. He wanted to talk to her about moving out. He was building up to it, goes to the White Room, and then he proposes.
Whatever I did, I'm sorry.
Sorry?
That's what we get. And Charles and Mabel walk in, they see it, and Mabel's got the lipstick in her hand, and Joy's like, oh, that's mine. How could this day get any better? So that's where we're at.
There are now pictures of my penis on the internet.
Episode 5 called Love. Charles comes out of the room. They were like, did you talk to her about it yet? What's up with the lipstick?
No, but I will.
Charles, you said you would ask her 2 days ago. Let us in. We can talk to her.
He hasn't talked to her about it. Oliver, his mind is just on this date with Loretta, and then everyone's kind of wondering why Mabel's dressed up so nice, and it turns out she's meeting Tobert.
Are you going out on a date?
No.
So Mabel's just like, it's a stakeout. Charles does talk to Joy about the lipstick. Doesn't go well.
Do you honestly think I had something to do with Ben's death?
She ignored him at first, and then she kind of had to deal with it because he kept talking about it. She got defensive. Maybe rightly so. He wants to know how it got to Ben's dressing room. She didn't write the message apparently, but how did it get there? So he just wanted answers. Didn't go well at first, but Jane Lynch is back. That's nice.
Oh, so excited. Yeah. That was such a nice surprise.
I love that she plays like his double, and you saw the scene where they were like mirroring each other that one time. Yeah, it's cool.
Oh, they're so great.
Joy leaves, which gives them time to talk. Saz puts it together that, we need to dig into this.
Okay, talk to Mama.
She wants to really get into it with Charles. And we see Oliver get to Loretta's, and he's just an awkward, stumbling.
Oh my God.
Yeah, he's just awkward everywhere.
Cringy.
When he knocks the bed down and he says,
dinner before dessert, I always say.
And she's just staring at him like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, it was awkward, man. Mabel goes to meet Tobert, and it kind of comes out. Well, first of all, we see Johnny J on stage.
Hey, cool cats. I'm Johnny J, and I'm going to sing for you tonight.
Which is Jonathan. He's performing. Tobert says this story, how he did think it was him, but he's been following him, and now he doesn't think so. And this is a creative way to get a date.
And now I am on a date with that cute girl from the armoire. Okay, yes, I got creative.
We see Saz start to talk about the situation with Charles.
You have to prove to yourself Joy's not a murderer, so you can go ahead with the wedding.
They come back to that in a minute. Oliver and Loretta, the conversation leads to Ben.
You know who was a real fucking pig? Ben Glenroy.
And then he remembers, it said fucking pig on the mirror. Maybe she wrote it.
Did you ever tell Ben that? How'd you put a fucking pig?
At this point, no, he's really suspicious of her because of this conversation they just had. And then it transitioned to the other date with Mabel and Tobert, and they're getting to know each other.
They're my best buds.
Like, what do you talk about?
Murder, mostly.
And then Saz and Charles are doing this exercise, and they kind of cut the bullshit. What are you worried about? Comes out, why is she into me? She saw my face, all my pores up close, doing my makeup for 30 years.
And she still wants to jump my bones often twice a day. Now, isn't that the behavior of a psychopath?
He's very self-conscious. She goes, you're not afraid of joy. You're afraid of lowercase joy, like the actual feeling of joy.
You're not afraid of uppercase J joy. You're afraid of lowercase J joy.
Stop being a scaredy cat. You love this girl, clearly. Let's forget all this bullshit. And that's that. And then Jonathan meets this mysterious man at the restaurant, right?
Yeah.
She gives a funny description of what he looks like.
He looks like he should be in a limo. Rider or driver, I can't tell.
That's your description?
He wants to get a closer look, knocks over the waiter tray, and they cause a stir. And of course, once they get back up, Jonathan's looking directly at them. And then he just scurries off. When Loretta and Oliver are talking, it comes out that they did have a fight like a half an hour before we went on stage.
You fucking pig!
Apparently, Ben was being an asshole to everyone.
He was an asshole to everybody.
He didn't want to share the stage with a no-name actress, and he's this big star, and he's just a douchebag, and he was a dick to everyone. And then they kiss. Everything's going swimmingly for him right now. He's over the moon. He's very happy about this. So then, yeah, Taubert knows this guy, right?
I was Ben's private doctor, one of those celebrity concierge, anything you need prescription filler types.
Would you Google the description of a guy who looks like he should be in a limo?
I just know they call him Dr. C.
So then we get the conversation with Joy and Charles, and she was backstage when it happened, you know.
Ben had a cosmetic emergency. I don't know. I guess somebody hit him in the face.
He had this emergency red mark on his face. She's like, I didn't write on that mirror.
But I didn't write on his mirror.
I didn't do it. And then Charles admits that he actually punched him and caused the red mark.
I may, probably, have been the person who hit Ben.
And then the awkward conversation. You had all these doubts about me. You thought I might have been a murderer and you still proposed.
That was actually an accident.
Accident.
Like he just kept putting his foot in his mouth.
Yeah, Charles tends to do that.
You didn't mean to propose to me?
No, I didn't.
He's trying to save it. He's trying to reel her back into the conversation to have a positive outcome, and she's not having it. She tosses the cake on him. She calls off the engagement.
The engagement's off.
Poor Charles. And then we get the scene with Mabel and Taubert. She shows him the murder board. Like she lets him in on all this.
May I?
I don't know. I'm worried about your handwriting.
And then they kiss. Now she's wrapped up into this new relationship starting, whatever you want to call it. We get another cliffhanger, which this show loves to do. Oliver and Loretta, they did the deed, and he makes that stupid dessert line again.
But you excel at dessert.
Then she goes to draw a bath, and he finds a book full of clippings of him. Okay.
How many pigs have you played?
I don't know.
Episode 6 called Ghostlight. This is Howard's show this episode. Howard gets a lot of time here, and it's fun. He opens up talking about this legend of Gideon Gooseberry.
Theaters are known for their ghosts. Take the gooseberry.
You must sweep the energy off the stage or he curses your show each night, every time you have a show. So he's talking about this, and then we see a shot of Oliver comparing the handwriting in his head at this point of Loretta's F and P, which are identical. And then as Howard's doing this monologue, the opening monologue, he goes to Mabel's door and says that he killed Ben Glenroy.
I have something I need to confess. I killed Ben Glenroy.
We find out it's because he didn't sweep opening night, and it's the curse of Gideon Gooseberry.
Now you're saying a ghost killed Ben Glenroy.
Yes, Charles, it's perfectly simple.
He's very distraught. The reason he didn't sweep is because KT's office was locked. He couldn't get the broom. His ghost story could actually have some clues in it. It did, because he thought he saw Gideon, but he saw someone else. And that's Taubert's opportunity to walk into the conversation. First off, he walks into the room fresh out of the shower, and Oliver and Charles are like, okay, I guess this is happening. And spoiler alert, as Charles says.
Spoiler alert.
Nope, not the correct usage of that whatsoever.
Plot twist.
Plot twist, yeah.
Plot twist.
Still no.
But anyway, he was focusing on the outfit that was described, a cap and a red coat.
Did you hear what he said about the cap and the red coat? I mean, it kind of sounds like
Ben's doctor.
Sounds a lot like Dr. C, doesn't it? So he wants Mabel to pursue this Dr. C lead. This is when Charles decides to tell everyone that Joy left him.
Spoiler alert.
And he says Joy didn't write fucking pig on the mirror. And at this point in time, Oliver's got a pretty good idea of who did write it in Loretta. Charles and Oliver don't want Taubert to investigate on the mystery man. So they're like, just us. We're going to go check it out. Please don't invite him. It's supposed to be just us three. And then Howard screams out,
There is a murderous ghost on the loose.
He was so good, dude.
They get to the stage and we find out about this ghost light that's supposed to never go out, and it immediately goes out once someone says that. Oliver wants to investigate the dressing rooms on his own because of him knowing that Loretta wrote that at this point. They don't want him to, but then out of nowhere, a sandbag falls and almost just smokes Charles. And that's apparently how Gideon died.
A 300-pound sandbag came loose from the rafters and brained him in the middle of his second act monologue.
Then another one falls. Howard goes to talk to KT about that. While that's happening, Mabel finds a sign-in sheet of the entire cast.
Handwriting samples from the whole cast. We can use this to compare to the fucking pig on Ben's mirror.
If Oliver wasn't in a situation where he's trying to protect the person he thinks wrote it, that would be a great discovery and he'd be very excited. But he doesn't want this to happen because, again, he has a pretty good idea of who did it. He just doesn't accept it at this point.
Oh, I don't know. I don't think that would be very helpful.
Then Oliver is in the dressing room looking at the handwriting. He knows it matches at this point. He's going to share it, but then he hears something and he goes upstairs to investigate what that is. And then before you know it, someone puts their hand over his mouth. Oliver's talking to this mystery man, and it turns out to be Jerry Blau.
Jerry? Jerry Blau?
He's a former director. He's in the scene. And turns out he's living up there. He's the mystery man that they've been looking for. Okay, the moment Taubert's been waiting for. Him and Mabel see Jonathan walking out of his dressing room with a handful of prescription pills. He doesn't lie about it. Yes, I saw Dr. C. I was anxious. I don't want to be the leading man. This is too much for me. So he put me on the same meds that Ben was on.
And just a dash of methamphetamine.
Okay, so something that we knew as an audience that Oliver didn't know, or anybody else besides Joy, is that Charles punched Ben opening night. And Jerry explains the fight.
Charles punched Ben?
You didn't know any of this?
And then he reminds him that Oliver told him that indecision is death.
Choose what matters to you, and then do whatever you have to do to get it.
In this moment, Oliver's like, okay, I have to go erase fucking Pig because it's obvious that she wrote it. He goes, I got to erase this. The police got their man anyway. Greg, the stalker.
He
puts
was
it on
being a
Mabel.
real dick to Mabel. Yeah.
Yeah.
You were like a dog with a bone, Mabel. They arrested someone for Ben's murder, remember?
Puts it on her for not accepting Greg when none of them accept Greg as the killer.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Clearly he's just not being himself right now.
And yet you keep trying to throw suspicion onto my cast.
This all leads to Mabel being like, yo, fuck you guys. Cinda asked me to partner up.
She said that I don't need you guys, and I'm starting to see that she's right.
She lays into them both. Charles for not carrying his weight at this point in the investigation. Oliver for the move he's pulling right now. It's so out of character that Mabel knows it. That leads to her being like, hey, man's dead. Someone that I actually cared about. I'm going to solve this with or without your help. The episode ends with the group is split up. Really? I mean, you got Mabel and Taubert. They're looking at the murder board. They move Jonathan down from the killer suspect. It's just them two. Oliver's just, looking at what he did. He erased it. It's completely gone now. You can't match up the handwriting anymore. And that's it. That's the episode.
Gideon Gooseberry! Is that you?
Episode 7 called Cobra. So we have a opening monologue from Uma.
Believe it or not, I love people. Some people.
Who hasn't really been that big of a character this season.
I was going to say, we got some return faces this episode.
The opening scene, it had her looking at Ben's dead body in the elevator. After that, she meets up with Charles. It turns out he quit the musical.
Ah, you got shit canned.
It was ruining my life, my engagement, my sanity.
That's another big plot point this episode. It's time for Mabel to move out. She's moving out of the Arconia. She's with Theo. Turns out that Dickie is having a silent auction for Ben's movie stuff today, and they're going to go to it. So Cliff, Donna, and Oliver are all together trying to find Charles's replacement. Not going well. And then Cliff has a funny moment where he stress dances.
Cliff, darling, please. You know how upsetting it is for me when you stress dance.
And Oliver is trying to look at the bright side, saying, well, Charles wasn't passionate, so let's keep looking. Then they get word of a big name coming through.
Sweet mother of Sondheim.
Because of Cliff. Turns out to be Matthew Broderick. Really fun cameo this episode.
Matthew Broderick! I've had sex dreams about this moment.
Who, in Charles's mind, stole Ferris Bueller from him.
He was like, you were 41.
Yeah.
For the millionth time, you would not have been a good Ferris Bueller. You were 41.
Then we get Theo and Mabel going to the auction.
All right.
God, even after he's dead, everyone's just trying to make a buck off my brother. It's fucking gross.
And then he immediately screams out,
there's a minimum bid on this of $5,000.
Charles is bummed they moved on so quickly, but then he's like, all right, I'm not just gonna wallow. Let me get back into the case. He gathers the hankies together and he wants to go back into that side of it. Then he has the idea to go get Uma's. So then we get the scene with Charles going to Uma, asking for her hanky, says it could be a big clue. She sold it for $7,000.
Mabel thinks it may belong to the killer. Who'd you sell it to?
One of those snake dorks upstairs.
And who bought it? We do get that answer. Then we get a quick scene with Oliver talking to Mel Brooks on advice for Matthew Broderick. Basically, like, you're screwed. If he's trying to put his spin on everything, it's not going to work out. Okay, now this is the scene where Mabel figures out the time on Ben's watch. So she's looking at the pic of Ben dead.
The police said Ben died at 12:06. But that's because it was the time on Ben's watch when he fell and it stopped.
Noticed the time on the watch. She puts it together. Greg couldn't have been there. He sets his watch 20 minutes early.
Dickie said Ben always set his watch 20 minutes early, which means he died at 12:26.
So they think it was 12:06, but it was really 12:26. Couldn't have been Greg. Then Taubert gets the info on the watch. He and Mabel are just focused on starting their podcast, the Bloody Mabel podcast, because she broke up with the gang. Okay, then we get another bit of evidence. The first drawing of the Cobra, which was apparently drawn by Ben, it's R. Glenroy. R could mean Richard could mean Dickie.
What, the B is an R? What, for what? Like Richard, Dickie?
They all think it's him. In this moment, Mabel's like, okay, Greg definitely didn't do it. Let's get him out of prison.
But first things first, let's record.
Yes.
Get you out.
They really see it as motive for Dickie. So Oliver has what Mel Brooks said in mind about Matthew Broderick being a problem. So he says, hey, you asked too many questions, go home. And then he fires him.
And Broderick, you're fired.
That's the end of Matthew Broderick, and Charles is back. He gets rehired. Then the quick shot of Mabel, Theo, and Taubert working on the pod, and she goes off to the other side of the room, looks at the picture of the gang, clearly misses them. Oliver tells Charles why he erased it. He shows him the scrapbook.
I took this from Loretta's apartment.
Charles isn't convinced by it at all.
I don't think she did it.
Why don't you just talk to her about it?
If you're worried, why don't you just talk to Loretta? I wish I'd just talked to Joy.
And why don't we give this to Mabel as a peace offering?
Or we could just suck it up and apologize.
They go to do that, go to her apartment. She's already gone. The new person's in there, so she moved out. As of this point, they're still not made up, but they're building towards that happening. And then towards the end of the episode, you hear the Bloody Mabel podcast, and she points out that Greg wasn't there.
But Greg wasn't even in the building when Ben was pushed down that elevator shaft.
The police want to open up the case again.
And it's time to reopen the Glenroy case.
And then we get the smoking gun. Dickie has the hanky with blood on it.
So where are your friends? Murder them too?
I bet you would have made a much better Ferris.
Episode 8 called Sitz Probe. This episode opens up with Loretta doing some type of monologue, talking about how she ended up in New York City, got pregnant, gave her baby up for adoption, and it's Dickie. Dickie's her son. It's the night of Sitz Probe when they were going to have the actors with the orchestra for the first time. And then we see a shot of her like debating, am I going to tell him? Because she wrote a letter for Dickie to explain the whole situation, how she's the biological mom, and had Loretta go talk to Dickie. They set up a dinner date.
So supper later?
I'd love to.
Then Oliver is hurt that Mabel dropped a podcast without them.
You released a podcast without us?
She is talking about how Taubert lent her his GoPro.
Whoa, GoPro.
And Charles is wondering why she's not at the Arconia anymore. She explains that she's staying with Leo. She had to move out. Then they get to it that her gut feeling is that Dickie is the murderer.
Do you have a suspect?
I have a lot to figure out. My gut keeps telling me it's Dickie.
Which, of course, Oliver is okay with. But then, the news gets out that Greg was released. Taubert texts Mabel, you were right. And then everyone gets a text. And right after that, Detective Williams makes her grand entrance back.
The killer is someone in this room.
And Cliff and Donna are just upset. They're focusing on the show. They're upset that a critic, Maxine, is there. And Oliver just wants to build buzz because he knows that Maxine was going to pan it originally. So he wants to get her opinion on the musical. The trio and Detective Williams are in the back. She wants to find a room to do interrogations. Mabel says we need to get in on those interviews. Oliver just seems pretty concerned about the whole thing. And Mabel goes, hey, finding the killer is the only way we have in opening night. We have to do this. Then Howard, so he has something he wants to show Mabel.
Mabel, come on.
Howard explains the spooky noise he heard opening night that he had told Mabel before.
Then this happened. The spooky sound from opening night when I was looking for the broom and the door was locked.
It turns out that it was a shredder. Someone was shredding documents on opening night, but he thinks he can reassemble it, the bits of paper. Howard seems like he's the man for the job. He really wants tape.
Go get me scotch tape, then get the hell out of my way.
Here's where the genius plan begins, that we find out later what they were doing with Detective Williams. So he found her a room, his dressing room, and he tries to stay, gets kicked out, comes back in, is awkward, but this is all part of a plan. Loretta texts Oliver that she wants to talk, so obviously it's going to be about the book that was missing earlier in the episode, the scrapbook of Dickie and Ben. So he goes to see her to talk about it and doesn't lie. hey, did you take something? Yeah, I took it. Here it is. I'm sorry. And you don't have to explain, but you kind of do have to explain. And that doesn't really go well. And then Mabel talks to Loretta for a quick second. Really, Loretta's just trying to get information like why she thinks it's Dickie.
Maybe I should find out what your theory is and lend a hand.
So Loretta's talking about Dickie, how she doesn't think he did it.
Dickie's just a really good kid.
Said he like 50?
When Charles is performing his song, Williams goes to see it.
Just watch. Just watch.
And that's what they did. They planted it. It was like Inception. They got it into her head. He crushes it, does a great job. Really
fantastic job.
Yeah, this is a really catchy song. This is when Oliver sneaks off. We see Mabel and Howard hard at work. Dickie's getting talked to by the police. Like all this is happening while Charles is still singing. And then right after that, Dickie cancels dinner with Loretta because that's why the cops were talking to him. They want to talk.
I can't do dinner tonight. The cops said they need to talk to me.
And Howard and Mabel are not making any progress with their trying to piece together the shredded docs. And then Mabel finds the box of rat poisoning. Then she gets some motivation to motivate Howard, really. He will, but he wants to get on the podcast as a reward.
I can be on the podcast.
I said might, and who knows.
But before she left, he found the date of the opening night on a piece of paper. So that's the page they want to focus on. So then we get that scene that we've been alluding to, Jules, the trio talk.
We have the interrogations on tape.
They say what they did, how they manipulated Detective Williams to get the GoPro in there while Charles was performing. And Mabel's impressed.
But you guys actually did it.
To the point that they make up and they're going to film another podcast episode together.
Want to make a podcast with me?
And then a nice moment, Maxine compliments Oliver, saying it's pure Putnam and that she is giving her approval for Death Rattle Dazzle. But then we get the scene with Loretta talking to Dickie. She doesn't feel it's the right time to say, oh, hey, I'm your mom, by the way. So she just says,
you didn't deserve this. None of this.
And then, all right, Loretta's singing, and it was very reminiscent of Charles singing with a bunch of things happening in the background. But Charles spots her book, her scrapbook, goes through it, finds the letter. You know, Mabel actually was the first to grab the book. He grabs the letter, and he just reads it. And Mabel notices that this thing's for Dickie. This book is for Dickie. Why would he be in every picture?
These aren't photos of Ben. They're photos of Dickie.
So as Mabel puts this together and she notices it, Dickie is being taken in by the police. And then she just loses it, doesn't want him to go in. So she says she did it.
I did it. I killed Ben.
She poisoned him, and when it didn't work, she pushed him down the elevator shaft. Oliver's freaking out.
Loretta, no. No.
They cuff her, they take her away, and all of this stress builds up, and Oliver has another heart attack as the episode ends.
And can I be on your podcast?
But I do love a good chair.
Episode 9 called 30. So Oliver's okay. We were worried about him. He's okay, and they're actually going to send him home.
The doctor said I can finally go home.
But he's just worried about the play. That's where his mind's been the entire season. That's why he didn't want Loretta to get arrested. Mabel, her mind is at, okay, we think it's Dickie, right?
We're focusing on Dickie.
Let's prove it's him to get Loretta out of jail.
Don't we need to prove that her son is Ben's real killer to get her out?
Then Mabel kind of circles back to the hanky bit.
We don't know whose hanky he was holding on to when he died.
Charles is just focused on who Ben was talking to when he said, you're going to ruin me and I'm going to like it. And I love what they did this episode, giving us that answer. So they're like, hey, what's left to do? Let's start recording. And then they pull out like the biggest microphone I've ever seen. That thing was giant.
So giant.
Oddly enough, Donna left cookies for Oliver at his apartment. Same brand, Schmackeries, and they were really circling around that, the point of the cookies and you know, all of that with Donna. So I'm really happy we got that answer this episode. Mabel says, hey, let's question Dickie.
Without spilling that Loretta's his mother, it's not our place to tell him.
They're talking to Dickie. It gives us a lot of information. They said,
we thought you did it.
And we thought you covered up the blood test. Oh, I did do that.
I did do that. I mean, I didn't know he was poisoned when I did it. I just knew there was other stuff in there he wouldn't want getting out.
That's why it didn't show up on the test, because Dickie did mess with that. So we get his alibi. We get Dickie's alibi.
I got wasted, put on Ben's Cobra suit, and went looking for drugs and whores.
He left the party early to go see the 5 whores.
Do sex with his 5 whores.
Okay. Ben's affectionate nickname for these ladies. It's Trixie, Marigold, Emerald, Dot, and May May. He has a pic proving that he wasn't there. He was in the Cobra outfit sitting outside trying to get in. A dog peed on him. Not a great night for him. He got the image from the cops. The cops don't really buy it because you can't really see his face. So Dickie kind of circles back to Loretta. I can't believe it's her. They say, hey, I don't think it was her. Why would she confess? They're all just like,
no.
Oh, yeah, theater folk. Cuckoo.
They go to the place where the 5 whores are, and the place is actually called Snitches Get Stitches, which is what Ben told Dickie when Dickie asked about the place.
And when I asked about it, he'd say, snitches get stitches.
But that's just what it's actually called. So they get to the back, and it's a group of old ladies.
You're the 5 whores?
And they had a sewing circle with Ben.
We miss him terribly.
He wanted to do something nice for everyone. It was his idea. He made the hankies with the help of his sewing circle. And that's what they were doing right before the show. So they say he did call them and left a voicemail. They play the voicemail and he was panicked. He just was in a weird state. We see his actions that day. He gave them a call to say, hey, are you here? Are you coming? He really wanted them to be there for support. He's surrounded by people he can't trust. They're out to get me. Charles is like, all right, why was Ben in distress? What happened leading up to the play? So they need to fill in a gap of 30 minutes. How do you fill in that gap?
Williams questioned everyone who crossed paths with Ben that night, and we can use those interrogations to make a timeline of that 30 minutes.
Here's the timeline. This is everyone's interactions leading up to Ben going on stage before he collapsed. So KT was first. She tells them about the half hour that they talk about where everyone should be there 30 minutes early, and he was late. Cliff had brought in cookies from Donna. Dickie's turn. He says Loretta was encouraging him to leave Ben. He had his list of bullet points. Ben stole this note. Loretta walks off. Ben reads it, finds out that Dickie was going to quit. He thinks it's all because of Loretta. And then we get Howard's bit in the interrogation. He was talking about something that we knew about already, how KT's door was locked, and he heard the shredder going. And then it's Loretta's turn. And this part we knew they were going to do their fight scene. It turned into a real fight when they were bringing up things that were really going on in their lives.
Wow, this dialogue really lines up.
And it was all about Dickie, really. And she storms off, and then we see Charles come in. Charles punches him, and then the Joy touch-up. Then it's Donna's turn. In her story, she was talking to Cliff, and Cliff says,
I put everything into this play. I need it to be a hit.
And then she says back,
I won't let you fail, sweetie. Here's a kiss from Mommy.
What is with them kissing on the lips so many times?
Oh, I hate it. It's so
weird.
uncomfy.
And Ben is just worried about his guests not being there, his sewing circle. So she tries to calm him down, Donna does. Sends him back to the dressing room. We see what happens in just a minute. While he's walking in, Talbot walks by.
Right. Well, how about we start shooting some behind-the-scenes stuff, huh?
Ben tells him to fuck off, fires him. That's right before the scene that we know he's talking to Cookies.
I want you so fucking bad, but you're gonna ruin my career.
There's kind of a ticking clock, Jules, because 5 p.m. is Loretta's arraignment. They wanted to figure this out beforehand so they could go in with information to get her out. Then who comes to save the day? Howard. He solved the shredder puzzle. He put it together. It comes in handy because Oliver notices it right away.
2 words I'll never forget. Didn't sing. This is Maxine's review of my original show.
The review says that Ben was the weak link in the show. And they sing to Mabel because it's her birthday. Right after this, Oliver's talking to his food before he eats it. That sets a light bulb off in Mabel's head. Keep doing it. Keep doing it. I got it.
I know who Ben was talking to.
And just like Jules said, week 3 of this show, Jules said that he was talking to Cookies. That's what Mabel figures out. And then he wrote fucking pig on the mirror because he had what Loretta said in mind because she just called him a fucking pig.
Loretta was right. Pig! You're a fucking pig!
That's the timeline. The cookie was from Donna, and Donna said the same thing that the review said. Ben is as wooden as the lighthouse. And she said,
Loosen up. You look as wooden as that fucking lighthouse we built.
She said the same phrase, wooden as the lighthouse, right?
Yeah.
That puts it in Oliver's head. It's definitely her. She definitely did it. If you're going to think about the why, well, Oliver says,
and if it had been panned, it could have also been his last.
So she put the rat poison on the cookie, left it in his room, all to save her son from having a career disaster. Such a great episode because everything just fits so nicely into this storyline. So they need to find a way to get to Loretta quickly. It's rush hour. It's New York City. So how are we going to get there quick? Mabel has the idea.
Nobody stops a bride.
She puts on Joy's wedding dress. They get to the arraignment early by kind of sweet talking a security guard. They get in there. They go to Loretta.
I came to stop you. Don't plead guilty. You only confessed to save Dickie, but he didn't do it, and we can prove that. You have to trust me.
well, who did it? And right when that's said, the camera pans over and Donna's there in attendance. So there you go. Hell of an episode.
Perfection. Well, you believe me, right?
The 5 whores.
The season finale of season 3 and Only Murders of the Building called Opening Night. Let's get into it.
The finale was fantastic.
So good. And of course, they set up the next season. So this one opens up with Donna because all the heat's on her at the current moment. She's doing an opening monologue talking about her career achievements, and what her favorite thing she made was
Mamma Mia. Hands down, changed the trajectory of my whole career.
just a joke. It's, of course, Cliff, her son, and how rewarding / dangerous producing can be. That goes right into the trio and Loretta. She's with them now.
This is so incredibly exciting to be invited into the inner sanctum.
She didn't confess, and they bailed her out. Charles takes credit for bailing her out.
I paid your bail.
They're prepping on how they're going to go after Donna. Then Loretta points out that Donna is sick.
She's sick.
And then Charles says,
we don't have anything tying Donna to the push. We need a confession on tape.
That's their plan, to get that on tape. And then Loretta comes out of the blue. Oh, hey, Dickie gave me something. He thought I might need it. Pulls it out. It's the hanky. And then I love Loretta's reaction.
Did I do good?
So we get to opening night, and the first thing we see is Howard doing the Gideon ritual.
We welcome you. We welcome you.
And we see a quick shot of Jonathan taking his meds, which comes into play. Mabel tricks Donna by giving her a piece of paper that said new review in Katie's office. Then we see a quick one on the lips, one on the heart.
One on your lips. And one on your heart.
And that comes into play later with the whole hanky thing. She goes to Katie's office and they just come at her with everything.
Surprised to see us, aren't you?
All of the evidence. And she just cuts the shit immediately.
You think I poisoned Ben, right? Let's jump ahead. I did it.
And then we see Talbot, who's hiding with the microphone in the corner.
Hi.
She's like, you know what? Whatever. I'll say it right into the microphone. I'm not hiding anything. And then they talk to her about the push. I didn't do that. You're not going to pin that on me. And then they bring out the hanky. She sees that her lipstick is on the hanky. Mm-hmm. So in this moment, she probably puts it together.
She knows exactly. Yeah.
Puts it together that it was probably Cliff. She admits to pushing him, which we know she didn't. And Mabel's face kind of encapsulates the audience feelings probably in this moment where you're not really buying it, but they're going with it as of right now. She's like, I'll confess, wait until opening night is over. And by the way,
I'm a woman with stage 4 lung cancer. I'm not a flight risk.
And then Howard runs in the room.
Oliver, we have a big fucking problem.
Jonathan took too many pills. He can't perform, but I know someone who can do it.
Howard, are you saying what I think you're saying?
But Oliver was like, oh, me.
The show begins. It's Oliver playing the lead, and Mabel is just uneasy. She doesn't buy it, and you could tell it in her expression that she just doesn't buy it. So she walks by in the back and sees Talbot. He's got the confession on tape.
This is a recording of Donna's confession.
Here you go. He's all excited. He was offered an indie film in LA. He wants her to come with.
Every part of me wants to ask if you want to come with me.
She's going to think about it. And then a really nice scene, actually, a very sweet scene. So Dickie is watching Loretta perform. She comes off stage. She tries to tell him that she's his mom. He doesn't let her finish. He knows.
I knew it. My God, I knew it. I feel like I've known since I saw you at that first read-through.
And then when she kissed him on the cheek, something clicked in Mabel's head. Right in that moment, she notices Donna talking to Cliff. Cliff walks off all sad. So Charles is on stage performing, and during that's when Mabel decides to follow Cliff. She goes upstairs. She tells him that, hey, your mom confessed, and he knows about that. He's pretty upset. But then she puts together the one on the lips, one on the heart, and noticed, oh, Donna put her hanky into Cliff's pocket.
You had her handkerchief, and it was you at the elevator with Ben.
And then we get the scene. Finally, we get the scene that we've all been waiting for. So the mysterious phone call was actually from Dr. C. That's why Ben was upstairs. He goes,
Doctor said I ingested rat poison.
How? I haven't eaten anything.
That cookie. That's all I ate.
And you gave me that cookie. And he's like kind of lackadaisical in the moment.
Me? No. The cookies were from Mom.
Like, oh, no, that was from my mom. Like, he doesn't really notice what's going on at this point. So Ben just puts it all together. You know, the way Donna was talking to him.
Go to your dressing room. Be nice to Ben. Holy shit, your mom poisoned me.
He says he's going to call the cops. He calls Cliff boy, which Cliff absolutely hates. Then his mood kind of changes.
It's Cliff, not boy.
And he said, no, I knew you were bad for the part.
I said you were a superhero hack who had no business on Broadway.
It was my mom that wanted to hire you. I knew you were bad for the part. We don't see the rest of it yet. It goes back to Mabel saying,
I'm right on it.
And then he has a moment where he threatens to jump from the attic down to the stage. It's just a whole mess. This moment, as the audience, we know, okay, Cliff did it. The murder's solved. Loretta's performing. The show is still going on. And Cliff says it was just an accident. He didn't mean to do it. And he says, I can't let my mom take the fall, admits that he did it. So Charles notices what's going on. So he runs upstairs.
Oh, God, that's a lot of stairs.
And then we see it. We see the scene when Cliff pushed Ben. And then Oliver goes upstairs too.
Oh, that's a lot of stairs. Right?
Cliff's dangling from the roof at this moment. But at this point, Donna was up there and she puts her hand on him. So he stops and the trio get to celebrate their victory with a little fist bump to each other. And then immediately after this, Donna and Cliff are taken away and they kiss one last time. But how about those kisses mattering in the end? Yeah.
I also think they kind of banked on people kind of like kind of like not really looking at it.
Yeah, that's what
like,
happened with me.
Mabel did the same thing. She just like kind of turned her head like, I don't want to fucking look at that. That's gross.
That's cool how that paid off. It paid off in the end. And then they're back at the Arconia and Oliver's reading Maxine's new review and it's positive. And then Oliver says,
Congratulations, everybody. Yeah, I did it.
And then, Taubert's talking to Mabel about LA again. And she's got stuff to take care of in New York. So she wants to stay around, but she'll visit. Then Saz shows up.
I got a cold case for you.
Charles gets a text from Joy. Romantic?
Scott Bakula says hi.
It's not romantic.
Not really romantic. Okay. We see what looks to be Charles. They're even whistling the Pickwick Triplets song. So I thought it was Charles when she was whistling the Pickwick Triplets song. They get shot, sniped through the window. So another death in the Arconia, and then it zooms in and it says it's not Charles.
The fuck did I write all these cards for?
If you made it this far, you are a legend. Thank you so much for watching that whole recap. Please comment your theories below for season 4. Do you think they were trying to kill Charles and they got Saz by accident? Or do you think they were trying to kill Saz? Do you have any leads? Put some comments down below and we'll read some for our first video when Only Murders in the Building comes back on August 28th. All right, we'll see you then. Later.